This video is sponsored by TrueFire. Learn, practice and play with TrueFire. In one of my recent lessons, we created together a neo-soul chord progression, step by step, on electric guitar. Today we're gonna do the same on acoustic guitar and we're gonna explain everything about this chord progression. We're gonna cover embellishments and chord positions, but we're also gonna go deeper into the music theory, understanding how and why you can use certain chords, particularly diminished seventh passing chords, in your chord progressions. So as usual, let's start by picking the key for today, and today's key is going to be E minor. So we are in the key of E minor and E minor 7 is the one chord. But we are not going to start from the chord E minor. We're actually going to start from an interesting chord because this is also going to explain something about the Roman numerals that we like to use when we analyze a chord progression. So we're going to start from the note C, okay? Now, the note C in the key of E minor on the E minor scale, E minor natural scale, is going to be the 6th note, and many people think about it as the 6th degree, okay? Labeling it with capital letters because it's going to be a major chord with a 6 in Roman numerals. However, this is actually going to be the flat 6. Let's try to understand why. The major 6th interval is made by 4.5 steps, which means starting from the note E, you will find the major 6th being the note C sharp. The minor 6th interval is instead 4 whole steps, so starting from the note E, you will find the note C, creating this interval. Now, any natural minor scale has a flat 3, a flat 6 and a flat 7, meaning a minor 3rd, a minor 6th and a minor 7th degree. So the minor 6th is the actual interval that we use for the 6th note of the scale in minor keys, in natural minor keys at least, and that means in the key of E minor that leads to the note C. And if you don't believe it, run through the E natural minor scale and you will find E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, okay, and then obviously D, and back to E. So that means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the 6th note, the flat 6 is the note C. So here we are gonna find the root for the first chord, which is going to be C major 7. However, we're not gonna play this typical C major 7 because we are gonna play the flat 6 major 7 as a shell voicing. So many people, knowing this C major 7, would just remove the 5th in order to play the shell voicing, and you would be left with C, B, E, 1, 7 and 3 of this C major 7. However, this goes across 2 different octaves because the note E is 1 octave higher. So what I would like to do instead is bringing this back into 1 octave only, generating a closed position for this shell voicing. So instead of having 1, 7 and 3, I want to have 1, 3, 7, which means C, E, B, and it sounds like this. It's a little bit darker to me, okay? So this is the position we are going to start from, only 3 notes, C, E, B. However, the way I like to play it is using a hammer-on, a pinky hammer-on, as we often do in R&B, between the notes A and B, so between the 6th and the 7th, major 6th and major 7th of this C major 7, generating this, which is a hammer-on, which to me sounds really cool, and the way I do it is second finger on the C, then a bar covering E and the A, and then hammer-on with a pinky on the 9th fret playing the note B, doing this. Don't worry if you struggle following this along note by note, you can find everything tabbed out on my Patreon page. Now, I like to play this chord progression finger picking, and this time I'm only going to use thumb, index and middle because I'm only plucking the lower 3 strings here doing this, okay? Now, particularly the way I like to play is this, which is going to be a pluck of the 3 strings simultaneously with this hammer-on, followed by a percussion like 1, 2. But then I like to play the same 3 notes separately, like thumb first, then only these 2 with the hammer-on, and then the 3 again with the hammer-on. So, okay, because I like the idea to hear the hammer-on 3 times in a row, but with different timings. Followed by another percussion, and I actually like to play after this second percussion 2 more notes, which are usually the A string and then the E string, but feel free to maybe play sometimes the D and then E string, okay, so... Or... So make sure you pay attention to the right hand, which is doing... Okay, this is in slow motion, but again, feel free to check out the tab on my Patreon page. With over 2 million users worldwide, whether you are a beginner, an intermediate, or an advanced player, TrueFire has lessons to enhance your playing. On TrueFire, you can find lessons of all styles to get you inspired. Get 30% off courses using the promo code BIDER30. Or like I do, sign up for the All Access Pass to use the entire TrueFire catalog. I love TrueFire. Give it a go, and I think you'll love it too. I want to thank TrueFire for supporting this channel and for the help in making this video, and now let's go back to the lesson. So after this flat 6 major 7, we are heading to the 5 chord, which starts on the note B, because B is the 5th note in the E natural minor scale. However, when we harmonize this scale on the 5 chord, I find a B minor 7, like this, okay? But I don't like to play the B minor 7, I actually like to play a B dominant 7 here, like this. This would be the shell voicing, made by B the root, D sharp, the major 3rd, and A, which is the flat 7. However, this chord doesn't really belong to the harmonization of the E natural minor scale, and we said that we are in the key of E minor. So where is this coming from? Now, there are several explanations to this. Just bear in mind that it is very common to have a 5 dominant 7 going to a 1 minor as well as to a 1 major, but you can think of this as an actual secondary dominant. A secondary dominant, I know that I talk about it quite a lot on the channel, is nothing but the dominant chord, the 5 chord, to the chord we are heading to. Okay, in this case the chord we're heading to is the 1 minor, the E minor 7, so the 5 of the E minor 7, the 5 dominant 7 would be a B7. But there is more, because we are heading to a minor chord. I don't like to play just a classic regular B7, although in shell voicing, so mid 5. I like to play it as an altered dominant 7 chord, because I like to add even more tension to this chord. And one of the possible alterations that you may play, and it's my favorite, is this note here, which is the note G, or if you think about it from a B perspective, is an F double sharp really, which means that you are playing the sharp 5, or if you want to call it G, you are playing the flat 6. It's the same thing, so you can think of this position as a B7 sharp 5, or B plus 7, which is the same, or B7 flat 13, which is exactly the same enharmonically. Okay. Now you can play it with this position 1, 2, 3, and 4 in terms of fingering on the left hand, but I would encourage you to try and bar 2, maybe even 3 strings with your ring finger, generating this nice, interesting fingering, which allows you to play, for example, 3 strings when you start plucking it, followed by the B string on its own, like, and then a percussion. 1E and R2. That's the timing that I'm thinking about. Okay, so far we got. But now, after the B7, which is the secondary dominant, I like to play the secondary diminished 7th, which is the same concept. I'm still thinking of a B7 altered, maybe a B7 flat 9. And as I've explained on the channel a few times, if you play this B7 flat 9 rootless, so without the note B, you actually generate a diminished 7th chord, which starts on the major 3rd of that B7, which is the note D sharp. So in other words, you can play a D sharp diminished 7th, which is nothing but a B7 flat 9 rootless without the note B. Okay. However, we also know that diminished 7 chords can be moved by 3 half steps, and you're just playing the same notes in a different order, in other words, an inversion of that D sharp diminished 7th. So if I move it by 3 half steps going up, I'm playing this time an F sharp or G flat. But I would say F sharp diminished 7th this time. So we are playing D sharp diminished 7th into an F sharp diminished 7th, same note, just an inversion of each other. And they are still the same B7 flat 9 ruthless, okay? So I like to play this and then slide to the next one. So D sharp diminished 7th and slide to the F sharp diminished 7th, okay? But I also like to play a hammer-on embellishment. So on the first of these two chords, I pluck the 4 strings A, D, G and B together, but I play the pinky with this hammer-on between the notes E and F sharp, because at the end of the day, E is the tonic of this key, so, okay? Then I slide here and I simply play the 4 strings, plucking them together. Like this. So far we got and then we are finally heading to the 1 minor, the E minor 7 chord. Several ways to play it. I'll show you a couple. I like to first pluck the 4 strings A, D, G and B with a hammer-on of the second finger between F sharp and G, 9th and minor 3rd. Repeat that minor 3rd on the second string. Percussion. Pluck the chord once more, same strings, then just the thumb on its own, and finally I can play a hammer-on pull-off on the first string with a pinky, you know, generating that neo-soul flavor. And then finish for the last time on the note G, which is again the flat 3, so that you get this type of melody, na-ni-na-na, na-ni-na-na. To me, it's always, the goal is always to make these chords sing, okay? And once you're done with this, we could finish here. However, it's common practice to have even numbers for the bars that you want to use for a chord progression, so I need another bar. And in the other bar, I like to play another run of diminished 7 chords, but this time they are going to be different diminished 7 chords. We've already used D sharp diminished 7th, F sharp diminished 7th as the upper part of a B7 flat 9. Now I'm actually going to play F diminished 7th, sliding up again 3 half steps and getting to a G sharp diminished 7th, or A flat. That's probably a better name this time, you'll see why in a minute. And I still think of them as secondary diminished 7 chords, the upper part of a secondary dominant. But what is the secondary dominant? Well, this time it would be a G7. Just a classic G7. And you know why? Because G7 is the 5-7 of the chord we are heading to, which is the C major 7 that we use at the start of this progression. I'm thinking of this as a loop. So at the end of the G7, we start again from C major 7, which was the flat 6 major 7. So the 5-7 dominant of the flat 6 major 7. Obviously, if I think of this 5-7 dominant once more, because I want to create more tension, as a 5-7 dominant O-thread, so a G7 flat 9, and I remove the note G, I'm left once more with a diminished 7th chord, which I can play, for example, starting from the flat 7, which is F. Because previously, when we were doing a B7 flat 9, we started from the major 3rd, we then moved to the perfect 5th, you know, D sharp to F sharp. We could have moved to the flat 7 and to the flat 9, the other notes of this chord, because we said that we can move it by 3 half steps every time. Now we are starting from one of those notes for the G7, which is the note F, the flat 7, and then moving to a flat, which is the flat 9. Okay, so previously we've started the diminished 7th from the major 3rd and the perfect 5th of the original secondary dominant. Now we are starting from the flat 7 and the flat 9, the other 2 degrees, of the new secondary dominant, which is the secondary dominant of the flat 6 major 7. Okay, I know it's a bit complicated at first, but I promise everything makes sense after a while. You practice them, and if you want to see this written down with all of the details about the intervals and the degrees, head to my Patreon page, because together with the tab you can find a full harmonic analysis explaining everything about the music theory of this chord progression. So now what's the timing for these two diminished 7 chords at the end? We go something like this. So I played thumb, index, middle and ring together, percussion, slide, and pluck them all together. Percussion again, ready to start. So these are all of the chords we need, guys. Let's play the full progression nice and slow, Pay attention to the right hand as well and check out the tab on my Patreon page if you need to see all of the strings that I'm plucking or playing as an arpeggio. Now, let's have a look at the second option for that E-7. When you start it, if you don't want to pluck it together, you can actually strum it with the thumb. That's up to you, and it would create I'm obviously playing the same notes, but because I'm using the thumb to do this, I also rotate it to do the single note after the hammer-on. That's up to you. In the tab, it's gonna look the same. Just keep in mind you can either pluck it or strum it, okay? So let's play this in time now. Or if you instead prefer to strum it. Right guys, let me know in the comments if you like this format where we build together a neo-soul chord progression and if you want to see more chord progressions like this. And remember to check out the tab and the music theory analysis on my Patreon page.